our society prefers to avoid period talk, complaining about cramps, asking for a tampon, discussing a new kind of menstrual product, or even using the word ovaries. But the discomfort that comes with discussing menstruation costs us a lot more than aghast reactions or awkward exchanges. Our lack of comfort when addressing periods becomes a matter of health and disparity for a significant portion of our population. The word menstruation almost always automatically engenders feelings of uneasiness, whether or not you experience a period. In fact, according to the Female Forward Together study, 1 in 5 menstruating people do not feel comfortable discussing periods with a healthcare professional. Menstruation is treated globally as disgusting, shameful, and impure. And period-having people have borne the brunt of this stigma for centuries. The cultural scorn associated with menstruation causes surprising difficulties to bleed into the monthly lives of menstruators, erupting into larger issues like poverty, a lack of access to education, quality healthcare, and employment. Countless activists and organizers across the globe have started to attack the issue of what is commonly referred to as menstrual equity. International advocacy group Seventh Generation describes menstrual equity as having equal access to menstrual hygiene products. They go on to say, menstrual equity requires that everyone can care for their period affordably, easily, and without shame. Menstrual equity encompasses a myriad of issues, ranging from abolishing the luxury tax placed on pads and tampons to providing free period products in public buildings. All this being said, it is incredibly important to recognize that our society is far from menstrually equitable. So, this of course begs the question, what would a world with complete menstrual equity look like? For one, periods would certainly not be a hushed topic of conversation, and menstruation would be rid of the stigmas we hold against it today. In order to understand this stigma a bit better, let's rewind. For the majority of human history, periods have been regarded as shameful and something to be kept secret. But when and where did it all start? Of course, menstruation predates language, so this stigma is far more deeply rooted than the occasional euphemism like Shark Week or that time of the month. Journalist and female hygiene researcher for Clue, Anna Druitt, asserts that the fear of menstruation began because early humans found menstrual blood to be soiling and even toxic. Today, we now know that menstrual blood poses no unique dangers, but this view persisted well into the 20th century. In 1920, widely known and recognized Dr. Bella Schick coined the term menotoxin after conducting a, dare I say, study that determined that menstruating people produce a deeply toxic menstrual sweat. To test this invaluable theory, Dr. Schick had a non-menstruating person gently place flowers in a vase full of water, and a menstruating woman roughly handle another bouquet in order to get her menstrual sweat all over them. Shockingly, the flowers that were handled by a menstruating woman wilted, while the flowers that were handled gently thrived. From then on, medical professionals wholeheartedly believed in the secreted menstrual toxin of women on their periods, where, quite literally, every organism they touched died. To test Schick's verifiably true studies, Harvard gynecology researchers Olive and George Smith took the liberty of injecting small rodents with human menstrual blood. Afterwards, all of the rodents in the study died, leading the Smiths to conclude that menstrual blood does in fact have poisonous properties, and menstruating women were dangerous. Pseudoscience aside, such a misguided biological basis for loathing period blood persisted in tandem with encouraged, deeply rooted cultural stigmas. Feminist educator and journalist Cara Lowenthal claims that menstruation stigmas are as old as patriarchy itself. She explains that it's a normal part of everyday life for millions of women, and yet society teaches us to find it embarrassing, shameful, and disgusting. You don't hear nearly the same disgust expressed about male bodily functions. In fact, according to a Think's study performed in 2019, 51% of men think that it is unacceptable for women to openly converse about menstruation in the workplace. On top of that, 58% of menstruating people have felt shame or embarrassment from being on their period by cisgender men. And 71% of menstruating people have hidden a pad or tampon on their way to a restroom in fear of a cisgender man ridiculing them. While many institutions like to attribute negativity with menstruation itself, in reality, negative impacts that menstruation can have on a person are a direct result of the societal taboos surrounding them. Any period-having person will tell you that periods and PMS can be annoying, and in some cases, debilitating. Cramps and mood swings are no walk in the park. I've always had a complicated relationship with my period, and am in no way saying that menstruating people have to fully embrace and enjoy their cycles. However, instead of providing medical and financial support to menstruating people, our society stigmatizes the issue, making menstruation even more debilitating for period-having people. Simply put, our society is not inherently afraid of menstruation or period blood, but instead, we use it as a means to enforce patriarchy. Thus, in a world with complete menstrual equity, periods would not only be free of the constricting taboos that we like to place on them, but they would be fully and eagerly embraced and celebrated. No one would feel shame for being on their period, but beyond that, periods would not be used as an excuse to discredit and inflict violence upon women and menstruating people. The current stigmas against menstruation do not exist in isolation with ideological taboo. Menstrual inequities have real-world consequences beyond stigma that can impact one's ability to continue education, work, and provide for their families. Having a period in our society is unbelievably economically bearing. According to the 2018 Shriver Report, around 42 million menstruating people in the United States live in or near poverty. Additionally, women are 38% more likely to live in poverty in the United States than men are. Despite this, most American programs like food stamps and Medicaid, designed to assist low-income families in acquiring necessities, exclude menstrual products altogether. These programs actually consider menstrual products to be luxuries, alongside items like hair dryers and makeup. At the same time, however, male health products like Viagra are exempt from taxes and considered necessities. This concept is what is known as the tampon tax. The tampon tax is not an additional tax placed exclusively on menstrual products, but rather it is the consideration of menstrual products to be luxury goods. 33 states still tax menstrual products as luxury items, including Wisconsin, while donuts stay tax exempt. While the difference might seem marginal, there is a significant greater financial burden on people who menstruate when it comes to the tampon tax. In the United States, menstruating people collectively spend over $150 million a year on the sales tax for pads, tampons, and other period products. Professor of Public Health at St. Louis University, Siebert Coleman, and her colleagues investigated the realities of menstrual inequities in the United States by recruiting 183 women to help collect data from low-income communities. She explains that we were surveying women who were already receiving some type of services, so this might be an underestimate of the actual need of women in the United States. In the 9-month period that they conducted their studies, the researchers found that 64% of women had been unable to afford period products during the previous year, and 21% experienced this problem on a monthly basis. On top of that, almost half of the people they researched had to choose between food and period products at least one in the 9-month period. As an alternative, menstruating people are forced to make do with rags, toilet paper, old clothes, and cardboard from public restrooms in place of sanitary menstrual products. The use of unsanitary products can cause toxic shock syndrome, infertility, cervical cancer, and in some cases, death. The need for safe and affordable menstrual products is vital. These economic disparities lead us to what is commonly referred to as period poverty. The idea that menstruating people are denied opportunities because of a lack of ability to financially manage their periods. Period poverty is a cycle, and it all starts with our government's unwillingness to mandate that businesses and public institutions provide menstrual products, and instead instill a tampon tax. Because our society does not deem menstrual products as medical necessities, the legal barrier to period products solidifies, meaning that prisons, educational institutions, and public facilities are not obligated to provide the products. Because many legislatures do not actively work against and, in many cases, support menstrual inequities, a large portion of our population is left dehumanized and unable to afford basic necessities. Such inequitable policies lead menstruating people to have to choose between putting food on the table and managing their periods healthily. As Nicole Johnson, an advocate for an end to period poverty, told CBS, the average mother will put food on the table for their children with the last 5 in her pocket, and she will sacrifice the things that she needs. But this is not simply an issue of being able to afford something. Period poverty impacts education and careers, preventing people from maintaining their livelihoods. We suppress menstruating voices to the point that people are literally unable to attend school and work, only continuing the cycle of period poverty. As the study conducted by the advocacy group Period State of the Period reports, 4 in 5 students in the US have either missed class time or know someone who's missed class time because they didn't have access to period products. In a world with complete menstrual equity, a natural bodily process would never prevent someone from reaching their full potential. Instead of using the stigmatization of menstruation as a means of socioeconomically repressing women and menstruating people, we can encourage upward political mobility by providing resources, making menstrual products accessible, and actively provide healthcare for people with uteruses. As a period-having person and a menstrual equity activist, I have seen firsthand the devastating impacts of period poverty and menstrual shame. As I have worked alongside countless other youth activists to provide free period products to friends and community peers who have been debilitated by their periods, preventing them from attending school, pursuing work, or providing for their families, I have come to understand that menstrual inequities are occurring every day in our communities. But there are ways to stop seeing red over the issues of menstruation. And they start with tangible solutions to end period poverty and systemic menstrual inequities. As a start, we must demand an end to our government's refusal to recognize menstrual products as necessities. I, for one, have never felt that my period was a luxury, and it certainly shouldn't be charged as one. Write letters to your representatives and vote for those who respect the needs of period-having people. As Wisconsin representative and advocate for menstrual justice Melissa Sargent puts it, menstrual products are not a luxury good, nor a government handout. When those who do not menstruate walk into a public restroom, they have everything they need to take care of ordinary bodily functions, while those who do menstruate don't. If we make menstrual products physically accessible, it removes the common barrier to education and work that many period havers face. And the costs of supplying menstrual products are incredibly small. According to the New York Times, a single school or business spends about $4.67 each year per menstruator on supplying free pads and tampons. Finally, we must reorient the way that our culture perceives menstruation. Periods should not be a taboo subject, since they're a typical bodily function. A large portion of this is restructuring our sexual health education system. Let's focus on teaching menstrual education to all students, regardless of gender. Everyone will, at some point, come across someone who's on their period. And simply because one does not identify with a particular group or experience doesn't negate the fact that it's important to have sensitivity regarding the subject. Imagine the compassionate and inclusive society we could have if we didn't limit our education to such outdated binaries. It's up to every person, menstruator or not, to stand for those who not only have periods, but are unjustly impacted by the principles of a patriarchal society. Menstrual hygiene should be a fundamental human right, and in order to respect all menstruating people, we must stand for their inclusion in our culture, not rely on the avoidance of conversation to spare some unnecessary discomfort. We must make pads and tampons accessible to everyone, from students to incarcerated menstruators. We must see the eradication of the archaic, patriarchal stigmas against menstruation, because no bodily function should hinder someone from reaching their full potential.